Resident Evil has been a staple in gaming since the 90s, and to this day is one of the most revered horror franchises. Resident Evil Village has helped to set the franchise forward with a bunch of new additions in their winter expansion while seemingly ending the winter saga. Hello everybody, I'm Gleez, and today we'll be taking a look at the DLC expansion Shadows of Rose and discussing its worth in the story, its gameplay value, and whether or not it's worth your time. The video today will be presented in ultra-wide fashion. If you enjoy this style of video, or if you hate it, please let me know down in the comment section below. The game begins with Rose, Ethan's daughter, talking to Dion K. Wilson, and yes, I had to look that name up because it was so quick in the exchange that I missed it. And in this exchange, Rose discusses how she's having a really difficult time fitting in with her peers. All seem to mock her and think that she's some sort of a freak. She's interested in getting rid of all of her powers for the chance to feel normal and fit in. Kay tells her that there's a way to do this, and instructs her to use her powers to infiltrate a container of Black God. What this means is very unclear, but we are quickly thrust into the castle from the base game of Resident Evil, and the pieces come together over time. So Rose's mission as she enters this state of altered consciousness is to find the purifying crystal. Seems simple enough, but as we know with Resident Evil games, simple missions always call for extraordinary feats. Rose's mission is broken up into 3 distinct chapters. The first chapter, you're dealing with the merchant, and he is definitely evil, which at first was a bit of a disappointment to me. I always found the merchant to be quite endearing, but seeing that he made this evil turn and the character was shifted a bit, it was a little bit hard to take, but was he really evil? More on that later. As you move around the world, you see that the fungus has created a bunch of blockades and this slimy liquid that can even spawn enemies. The area seems overwhelming at first, but as you continue through the game, a guardian angel of sorts seems to contact you. He helps you on your journey by giving you important information as well as supplies. He goes by the name Michael, but it's clear from the onset that this is actually Ethan. They weren't fooling anybody. A few minutes into this section, you gain the ability to use some of your powers. By pressing the RB or R1 button, you can destroy slime and gross by focusing on the flower-esque aspects of the area. The easiest way to find these in large rooms is to follow the route. As you level up, you can also use your powers to freeze enemies and protect yourself from getting your face completely sucked off. The animations on these attacks and the deaths and the graphics are really good overall in the game. The castle section was very cool and kept me on my toes the entire time. There's some sort of a beast that's stalking you that you eventually wind up fighting in a boss battle at the end of the section. There were also ample puzzles and the atmosphere was ominous and creepy. Everything that I love in a Resident Evil game. The second section, you revisit the Benviento house. It is pretty creepy, but not quite as creepy as the big nasty baby that you encounter in the base game. It starts off with a little doll puzzle, which is easy to complete. As you progress further, you have these life-size mannequins that begin chasing you around the level. They're similar to the ghosts in Mario Brothers, where when you look at them, they stop moving, but as soon as you turn your back, you can hear them creeping at you with their feet smacking against the ground. It's super creepy. Once you get out of this section, you then get to flex those stealth muscles as you maneuver through a household area where all of the objects are extremely large and makes you feel very small. They also accentuate this by pulling the camera back, and it really does a good job of creating an atmosphere where you feel small and everything else feels big. In this section, there's killer dolls looking to find you as they're shining their light all over the place, and you're basically playing a game of manhunt. Toward the end of this section, Rose begins to question why so many of the enemies are bringing up her dad. And at this point, Michael, aka Ethan, takes Rose back to the original house and allows Rose to see how much she was loved. The communications between Ethan and Rose throughout the game have been very heartfelt and convincing. They did a great job with this. The themes of love, family, and sacrifice really show throughout the events. As Rose is enjoying the scenes of her childhood, you eventually face off with Evelyn, who is extremely pissed.
Dad.
No one loves you. No! No! Michael! Michael, help! Michael! No!
She's jealous of Rose because she's the chosen one, and Evelyn never lived up to expectations. You can really feel the anger in Evelyn as she yells in frustration and utilizes her anger to torment Rose. As you make your way through the confusing corridors, you eventually wind up facing off against Evelyn in a room where she uses concussive blasts in order to try to kill Rose.
I have been such a good girl! We were supposed to be a family! But they're completely obsessed with stupid old Rose!
It's your job to evade these blasts by hiding behind different objects in the room while also avoiding the slime on the ground. During lulls in the attacks, you have to use your special power and freeze her in the air and then boom, explode her with an attack. This section was really well done. I love the way that it sounds. The concussive blasts while wearing a headset were awesome. The way that Evelyn is screaming at Rose is very convincing. She is extremely pissed, and the actor who portrayed Evelyn did a great job with this. Toward the end of the fight, a cut screen takes over, and Ethan manifests himself physically and pushes Rose down a corridor to safety. It's then at this point that the cat's out of the bag. If you didn't know at this point that Michael was Ethan, you now know. Rose also knows. Now in this final section, Rose makes her way through the same area that Chris Redfield travels in the base game. This area is filled with a bunch of monsters. It's a lot of action and combat intensive types of gameplay at this point. It's about 10 minutes of it. The story is then expanded through documents found at the bottom of a hole as Rose enters an area that looks inhabited by someone. You learn that the merchant was actually a clone and not the real merchant, which is pretty refreshing because, again, like I said, I always liked the merchant in the base game. There's also more information that you learn about the story through a bunch of files that are located in this area. Rose then makes her way down to the purifying crystal and utilizes it, and as soon as she does and her powers are stripped, Miranda miraculously appears. Who didn't see that coming? She informs Rose that it was actually her the whole time. It was never Kay that told her to come to this area and to use the purifying crystal, and she needed Rose to do that so she had a chance at fighting her because Rose is just way too powerful for Miranda. And as we see in the boss fight, when we do fight her, it's shown that Rose is extremely strong. But before we get to that, as Rose is weak with no powers, Ethan steps in order to try to save her. Rose is then confronted with a choice. Does she leave her father for death? Well, I don't know. Can he die? I don't really know if this is even reality. Whatever. The details aside, Rose has to decide whether she's going to leave Ethan, her dad, for death or smash the purifying crystal and use her powers to defeat Miranda. And she chooses to embrace her powers and utilize them to save her father.
I don't want to leave you!
I know. I love you, but I need to know that you're safe. So please, just...
Ethan, you insolent pest!
I got this. Get out of here.
Don't worry, Dad. I've got this.
You think your powers will allow...
Rose's powers seem to max out at this point, as she now has added moves to her arsenal. She can use stealth dodges to maneuver throughout space. She also can absorb fireballs that Miranda's throwing at her and harness that power to deliver devastating attacks. It is clear that Miranda is nowhere near the strength of Rose, which is why she needed Rose to fulfill her evil plans. She wasn't strong enough to do it on her own. Rose seems to come to grips with her power. She understands that she's different and seems to appreciate these differences after forming a closer relationship with her father, Ethan. The family bond, sacrifice, self-acceptance, and determination were all strong themes in the DLC expansion. I really enjoyed the experience in both gameplay and storytelling. My only critique is that I only had about a 2.5 hour runtime. The game and the story was just so good that I wish it was longer. The Shadows of Rose DLC is definitely worth your time, and with the added additions in the winter expansion, I think $19.99 is a pretty good deal for what you get. So what did you think of the winter expansion? Let me know by commenting down below. Also, if you're new, be sure to click the subscribe button and don't forget to click the bell so you get updated whenever I post new content. So thanks for checking in. It's Jay Gleez signing out, and continue to game strong.